You're very welcome along to the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. It's just 3 weeks to go to the Cheltenham Festival as we build up using Cheltenham Trends, reviewing the weekend's racing, sharing eye catchers, and looking ahead to individual festival races with Matt Toombs and Donn McClean. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey. Before we get going, obviously, there's a massive cloud over the Irish racing and racing in general throughout the UK and Ireland. The sad passing of Michael O'Sullivan, aged just 24 after falling third the week before last. Donn, you would have met him not just on your racing TV, but you'd have done a couple of pieces with Mikey. Sum him up as a person for those that weren't lucky enough to know.
Look, it's horrendous, Dan. It's as you said, it's a cloud that hangs over the whole of racing and the whole of the country, really. Micheál Martin on Taoiseach, he was one of the people who paid respects to Michael, but it's still hard to get your head around it, Dan. Really, you can't imagine what his family are going through, his mum and dad and his wider family, Uncle Eugene and Maxine and the whole family. And like, they're a family that are steeped in national hunt racing and point to points going back generations. Like Lovely Citizen, when he won the 1991 Fox Hunters, his dad rode him. William, his uncle Eugene, trained him. His grandfather Owen, he bred him and owned him. And you know, that's the depths of the roots that they have in national hunt racing, going back even further than that. But like, from Michael O'Sullivan, like, he was, look, it's all been said, Dan. He was just such a good fellow, always respectful, always articulate, and always had the time. He always took the time to, you know, talk to you. And it's kind of hard to believe he's only 24 or 25 now on Friday. And then the quality of him as a jockey, like, he was the novices champion point to point riding. Then he went professional on the back of Marine Nationale, I suppose. But even like as a fledgling professional, like, the ride that he gave Marine Nationale in the Royal Bond Hurdle was fantastic. The race didn't work out too well for him. He got shuffled back a bit, but he didn't panic. He bided his time. He got up on the line. And similar in the Supreme Novices Hurdle, when he won that on Marine Nationale, like, again, against Paul Townend. Paul Townend kicked on, but he let him go. He didn't panic, and he just trusted in his horse and in himself that he'd go and pick him up. And then, of course, won the Fred Winter and Chazzy Matty, and was leading rider at the Cheltenham Festival on at the end of the first day. So, look, it's just hard to imagine, Dan. It's hard to get your head around it. It still hasn't really sunk in properly, really. But look, he's just going to be hugely missed by everybody.
No, Don, I think you said it well there. It just doesn't really seem real while you're talking about his career there, that he's no longer with us. But Matt, I know you want to say a couple of words about him from maybe a little bit from the outside, looking in at a jockey of Mikey O'Sullivan, and how much he accomplished in such a short career.
Yeah, exactly. From the outside looking in, I do feel a bit numb, as Don said. And it's a reminder about risk. You know, life is about taking good risk. But in life generally, we all decide which risks to take. Sometimes we get the rewards for taking those risks. Sometimes we get the downsides. For racing fans like me, it's a bit different. We don't take the physical risks that are part of what makes this such a wonderful sport. The jockeys do it on our behalf. We get all the reward with none of that risk. And Michael's fall from Wee Charlie came a year to the week after a young point rider from Paul Nicholls' yard, Keegan Kirkby, was killed at my local point track, Charing. I've had loads of family days there, parking by a fence, kids sitting on the roof of the car, watching the horses jump, whilst I hope watching the bravery and athleticism of horse and rider would inflame a love for the sport I love. But it is a risky sport. That is part of the magic. And we all know that jockeys are taking risks for our entertainment. So yeah, when you're enjoying it at the racetrack or watching on TV, it's important to keep in a corner of your mind that your enjoyment is based on their bravery. So like everyone else in the game, my thoughts and prayers are with Michael's family and friends.
Yeah, all of us, we send our deepest sympathy to Mikey's family, his friends, his fellow jockeys as well. And again, hard one to get your head around, but thinking of everyone down in Mallow at this very difficult time. Yesterday, Gorev Anam, as we say here in Ireland. We'll move on and start with the weekend review. Ascot Chase first. Matt, hit us with your trend and then a little bit of thoughts on the race and how it sets up towards the Cheltenham Festival.
So the trend is that runners in the Gold Cup, only 0 from 8 this century. This was a cracking race. It was a real advert for jumping. You know, 2 Gold Cup contenders taking on a veteran who specialises in races like this, especially at Ascot. Corbett's Cross and Long Pressé tried to take it to Pictory early on, stopping getting a soft lead, but neither could go the gallop and couldn't jump going that gallop. Pick Door, he'd been keen going to the start, got into a lovely rhythm, put pressure on the other two. But whilst this is the Cheltenham Trail, not every horse is about Cheltenham. He's the classic example of a horse whose big targets are through the winter. You always take such comments with a pinch of salt after a big win, but the vibes from Nichols and Cobden were that the Ditchit horses are just coming into form. I imagine Paul will have a relatively small team for Cheltenham, but be no surprise to see a few real improvers there. So keep an eye on his runners in the lead up to the festival. I was a bit surprised to see Long Press Ennis at all. He didn't look to enjoy the test last year, jumping left, taken off his feet early on, made a mistake, ballooned the next out to his left and was out of it quickly. The plus side is at least he didn't have a hard race. He bounced back last season to run a good race in the Gold Cup until his stamina ran out on the deep ground. 34.0 looks about right. Corbett's Cross was in a red hood. He looked relatively relaxed in the paddock, apparently didn't take the eye. He's just an iffy jumper. Skid whiff in the air, always looked an effort jumping at this tempo. He's got a real engine, but it'd be a leap of faith to think his jumping would stand up in a Gold Cup. I thought the Grand National was the race for him. I could see him jumping through the loose spruce fences, getting into a better rhythm, but he's not entered. He's 17.0 for the Gold Cup. We underestimate Emmett Mullins at our peril, but I think he's more one for in-running players on the Matchbook Exchange. If he were to get into a rhythm, then he has the ability to be a player. But I think it's more likely his jumping will put him out of contention fairly early on. This was a race to enjoy for itself. I love watching horses win through jumping, and it was a cracking spectacle.
Yeah, Donn, are you along similar lines?
Yeah, not a huge amount to add to that, Dan. Like Victoria, he's just so good at Ascot, and Kempton, his only defeat at Kempton was when he finished second behind Banbridge in the Sylvan Conti chase. This is his fourth win in a row at Ascot, and including this race last year. So look, he was just a joy to watch, just getting into his rhythm out in front, and he set a strong pace as well, and he maintained it the whole way to the line. So it was a big performance by him. Corbett's Cross, yeah, like he was dropping down in trip. He's a National Hunt Chase winner, so 2 miles 5 wasn't really ever going to play to his strengths, and it was just a question of whether his class was going to get him there and overcome the fact that he was competing over a trip that was short of his best. So he'd be better stepped up and trip again. Gold Cup, yeah, like he's a National Hunt Chase winner. So, and he's still probably unexposed. He's only had 9 runs over fences. So there still should be more to come from him. And you'd imagine that when he does get his jumping sorted, and if he can just be very fluent over his fences, he could, he's obviously a classy horse, but he could be among the top echelons of the staying chasers. And obviously a longer trip will help in that regard. But yeah, it is difficult to see how he's going to trouble Gallopin des Champs. Blue Lord, it was a better run than his first 2 runs this year. He finished 4th in the Hilly Way and 6th in the Paddy's Rewards chase at Epsom over Christmas. He was a classy horse. He won the Paddy's Rewards chase. He finished 3rd in Edwardstone's Arkle. So this maybe was a step back in the right direction, but he does hold an entry in the Ryanair chase, but you think he's going to have to improve an awful lot on this again if he's going to be involved in a Ryanair chase.
Absolutely, yeah. So we will move on to probably a similar-ish race in the sense of the division leading into the Cheltenham Festival. But the mare Golden Ace got up to beat Burdett Road, Matt, in the Kingwell. What was your thoughts on the race and either of these horses moving forward?
It was one of those races where it shows racing's capacity to surprise you because everything happened the opposite of what I'd expected. The trend is that runners are 3 from 36 in the Champion Hurdle, 25% profit. But with the power shift westwards across the Irish Sea, modern training methods not liking preps this close to the festival, the influence of the Kingwell's waning. Punjabi's the last winner, 2009. Now, I'd seen Golden Ace being brilliant, sprinting off a crawl to beat Brighter Days Ahead in the Dawn Run, looking all about having a great turn of foot. And I'd expected Burdett Road to go out, make an end-to-end gallop and try and run the finish out of her. And in fact, they went steadily. But it was Golden Ace who was off the bridle a long way out. She found loads. It was a really game winner. Lorcan said afterwards she'd never jumped or travelled, but was really tough. She did dive right-handed at the first and looked like she wanted to shift right-handed at other obstacles, which I'd not seen her do before. So perhaps she wasn't quite the best on the day. Burdett Road made a mistake 2 out when travelling much the best, which didn't help. But he had plenty of time to recover from that. Just didn't find as much as the mare did. Jeremy Scott's horses are just coming back to form, having been under the weather earlier in the season. 3 of his last 4 runners have won. So perhaps she's going to come forward a lot from this. Clearly, he's going to need to if she goes for the champion. Now, she looked a non-stayer at intermediate trips this season, but Jeremy's horses weren't running well then. She has form with lucky place over 2 mile 3 last season. So perhaps she's worth another go at that trip and the Mares' Hurdle instead. You want to know how she's going at home after the Kingwell. It'll be fascinating to see which path they choose. And James Owens mooted the county for Burdett Roads. Mark stayed on 150. He looks fairly handicapped back on quicker ground. His run style doesn't suit the county. It's proved impossible to win that from up with the pace. And we're in an era where if horse A beats horse B, people seem to think the horse B would never beat horse A, and it's not worth taking them on again. Punjabi was only third in the Kingwell before winning the champion. When it was a deeper division, it used to be commonplace for horses to win the Champion Hurdle, turning the form round from these small field conditions races. I think the Champion Hurdle would suit him much better. So I hope Connections take the bold route. They're both about 34.0, and if they line up, that probably reflects their chance. It's an each-way chance at best.
Okay, yeah, Donn, for you.
Yeah, like I thought Golden Ace had a great chance of beating Burdett Road, but I didn't think at halfway that she would. I thought she'd stalk and travel best of all and then beat him for pace. Like when she won that Mares' Novices Hurdle at Cheltenham at the festival last season, it was because they went very slowly. That was against Brighter Days Ahead and probably against Jade de Grugy as well, and she beat them all for pace. I suppose throughout the season, the early part of the season, they were eyeing the Mares' Hurdle and trying to make her into a 2.5 mile horse, but she just, as Matt said, she just didn't stay. She was well beaten in the Belkiel Hurdle, and she travelled best of all to the top of the home straight that day on the run to the final flight. She looked like she was going to be a player, but she just couldn't get to lucky place. So thought the drop back to 2 miles would suit her, and I thought a speed track like Wincanton would suit her as well. I thought she'd travel and quicken, but maybe she showed another attribute in terms of the way she won it, that she was able to dig down deep and see it out well. Like, interestingly, the standard time for the Kingwell Hurdle, so it's not quite 2 miles, it's 1 mile and 7 and a bit, is 23 seconds slower than the standard time for 2 miles on the old course at Cheltenham. So it's a totally different race, and I just can't get it out of my head that Golden Ace did beat Brighter Days Ahead on Birdie Bust and Jade de Grugy, albeit in a race that was run at a slow pace. And if she can come forward from this, then it may be that she could run into a place in a Champion Hurdle, and look, an awful lot depends on where Brighter Days Ahead goes, and that will determine obviously where King of Kingsfield goes as well. Looks like Lostomed is going to go to the Champion Hurdle, but yeah, look, it's hard to see her winning a Champion Hurdle, and she's going to have to improve on this in order to be competitive in it. But as Matt said, like the Jeremy Scott horses, they are coming into form now, and she's 2 for 3 at Cheltenham. Her only defeat at Cheltenham was in that Belkiel Hurdle when her stallion was probably stretched beyond its limits. So I think she'd be an interesting outsider in a Champion Hurdle.
Okay, Golden Ace one to definitely keep an eye on. As you said, that back form from the Mares' Novice, how good obviously does that form look like? Even more better than it did at the time this year. Matt, hit us with the Rendlesham trend here for handicap hurdles at the festival.
Yeah, runners are 3 from 24 in handicap hurdles at the festival, 102% profit. Third Wind was third in this 3 years ago before winning the Pertemps. I actually quite fancied Nemean Lion in this. He was withdrawn because of the ground. Even though it's described as dead, there looked to be plenty of juice in it. That was a shame. He's a Stayers Hurdle entrant. Would have been interesting to see what he could have done over 3 miles. The winner, Gwenny May Boy, rated just 139 and had to give £4 to 154 rated runner-up Beauport here. So if Beauport's ran anywhere near his race, this was a huge improvement from Gwenny May Boy. Jumping was really slick, and he was resuming what was a progressive profile because he won 3 in a row when joining Dan at the end of last season. He fell in the big handicap at Haydock on Betfair Chase Day. Perhaps it's taken him a couple of runs to get his confidence back. Last one was at Windsor, which looks a bit of a specialist track, so maybe you forgive that. He's qualified for the Pertemps final, and if you believe the Bear result, he was really well handicapped for that. Rather less well handicapped now, and we raised £10 to 149. In another season, I think Dan would have been going for Festival Glory in the Pertemps, but his priority is the Trainers' Championship. This was worth 34 grand to the winner. So I think this was what his Gold Cup was, even if it ruined his handicap mark. Dan said afterwards they may go to the Liverpool Hurdle at Aintree next. He's going to get an entry in the Pertemps. Had to be worth seeing what the handicapper did. But given he's up £10, I should think they'll look for some more prize money at Aintree.
Okay, Donn, for you.
Yeah, I was impressed with Gwenny May Boy. It was a good step forward. Like as Matt said, he won his first 3 races in the spring. when he joined Dan Skelton. He won twice for John O'Neill before that. He won that Premier Handicap Hurdle at Aintree on Grand National Day. And that's obviously a stairs race. He was rated 126 then. He's now 139. And yeah, a £10 hike. It's harsh enough, but he did win well. And like if you're looking at the Pertemps, mark of 149 going to the Pertemps, that's a high enough mark. Sir de Burley did win it off 152, but he's a bit of an anomaly, and it's just it's a higher mark than you would like going for Pertemps final. He quickened up well though, Gwenny May Boy. He was faster through the final 4 furlongs by 2 seconds than anything else in the race. So it was a good performance, and he just seems to have hit a rich vein of form now. There's every chance that he'll improve again from this, and he beat Beauport, as Matt said, who is rated 154. He'll probably go back over fences now. I think the Grand National is his aim. He won at Ascot, won the 3 mile 5 furlong race there in November, and he finished third in a long walk hurdle. So he brought a good level of form into the race, for all that he may improve from this now for the Grand National. Thunder Rock, you'd imagine he'll go back over fences as well. He's rated £12 higher over fences than over hurdles, so maybe he'll go back over fences too. And in the end, given all of that, like Botox did win this race last year in heavy ground, it might not have been that strong a race for a grade 2, but Gwenny May Boy, like all that he did, both visually and the figures say that it was a good performance. I just think that he might struggle in a Pertemps final off a mark in the high 140s.
Okay, that's the assessment there. We'll move on to the Albert Bartlett Prestige Novice Hurdle, and Don, might stick with you for this one. Battleborn Lad winning there.
Yeah, as a second win over hurdles, he was 0 for 3 in bumpers, but he was good here. He won at Hexham back in October when he beat Wendigo, who is now 2 for 3 over hurdles since then. He finished, and his only defeat was in the shallow hurdle. He was impressed with winning at Wetherby last time. He's now kind of among the top end of the market for the Albert Bartlett hurdle. So Battleborn Lad, to beat him like he did, that was impressive. I suppose on the negative side, he tried to run out going past the stands first time. That's not a trait you like to see. But I suppose the other thing was he did lead, and it was a slowly run race. He was able to set a sedate enough pace. The finishing speed percentage was 113%. So he did have it all to himself up front. But look, he is progressive. It's a second win from a second run over hurdles, so there's every chance he'll go forward again. He doesn't hold an entry at Cheltenham, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I thought if there was a horse to take out of the race, though, Dan, it was Moon Rocket. He was a little bit back in the field, and then whenever they quickened off the sedate early pace, he got out pace. He actually dropped back to 5th of the leading group of 5, and he stayed on well to finish 2nd with the first 2 clear. So it was a good performance, I thought, by the runner-up. He'd finished 2nd. He was only just beaten by a yellow car in a really big battle in the River Donn hurdle last time. He's entered in the Albert Bartlett hurdle. He's a 25 to 1 shot or thereabouts for that 26.0. So yeah, I can see in a more strongly run race, Moon Rocket could improve on this. Thought Bright Legend ran a bit better than his finishing position suggests as well. Dennis Hogan's horse, interesting that he brought him over. He hasn't won over hurdles yet, but he was a bit keen at Punchestown on his previous run when he finished third behind London Office Calling. He was a wee bit keen here again over an extended 3 miles. So maybe a drop back down to 2.5 miles. That might be the thing for him. And he's qualified for the final of the Albert Bartlett Triple Crown Series at Punchestown, and that's over 2.5 miles. So maybe that might be where Bright Legend will go. Okay,
bonus one there for Punchestown. Keep an eye perhaps on Bright Legend. And Matt, how does this the Prestige race be a trial for its namesake, Albert Bartlett, in March?
Well, runners are 2 from 27, 33% loss, but it's one of those stats that doesn't sound like a strong trial. When you delve into the record, it's a bit better than the bare stats, because the Albert Bartlett is so unpredictable. 10 of the last 11 winners going off a double-figure price. Those losers included placed horse 67.0, 101.0, also the World's End, who may well have won for not falling 2 out. So it's usually quite a good race. And I absolutely agree with what Don said about both Battleborn Lad and Moon Rocket. The pace and sedate pace of the race really seemed to suit the winner. He was doing 35 miles an hour up the straight. He really quickened off that. Whereas Moon Rocket, he got tap for toe and looked to stay on in more the style of a thorough galloper. As Tom was saying, Battleborn Lad does look a bit of a monkey. Wanting to run out in the final circuit, hanging much of the way. He was hard to get round the bends. Dumped Jamie Hamilton after the line. So it'd be interesting to see. Mark Wolford sees him as a chaser for next season, but if he can be kept sweet and go the right way, he could be a good prospect. Moon Rocket, Kim Bailey had said he was either this or the Albert Bartlett. So I'm guessing he's probably not going to go there. But he may turn up at the Sefton at Aintree. I think, as Donn said, if he got a really good gallop to run at, I could see him reversing the form. And he's the sort of horse who might be underestimated in the spring, having been beaten in both this and the River Donn. I think he's a bit better than the bare form. He's one for the notebook.
Okay, one from the notebook. And Donn, back to you. And we're going to go back to Ascot for the Reynoldstown. And obviously the changing man ran out the winner, but it was basically the story of the race. The race was essentially over on the third, after the third, with an unseat.
Yeah, like this race just fell apart. Obviously, Larry's Bar was a non-runner, and Jinko Blue unseated at the third fence, was it? And look, it just and then Picky Boy didn't run his race. Like, he's a horse who 2 runs ago he looked like it could be really exciting, but he's been disappointing in his last 2 runs. So I think it's a bit back to the drawing board with him. That said, the changing man, look, he's a hugely likable horse. It's kind of remarkable that he hadn't won over fences before Saturday. Brendan Powell just got him out in front, and he had really good form at Ascot before. He finished second behind Victorino in the Silver Cup form that was enhanced again on Saturday. He finished second in the Great Yorkshire's Chase as well. So he kind of deserved to go and win a big one. Kind of interesting that his win, having run 9 times over fences, was in a Grade 2 race for novices, but he did it well. I think he got a £2 hike for this up to a mark of 140. I'm not sure how he got that. He didn't do any more than he should have been doing. On the evidence that we had, but and he does hold an entry in the Brown Advisory Chase, and Joe Tizard was maybe mentioning that afterwards. I think he'd struggle in that, but off a mark of 140 in an ultimate chase, that to me would be a different story. He's just a really likable horse. It's good that he's got his win on the board. There was nothing ungenuine about him. He just got beaten by better horses in his last couple of races, and maybe with this win on the board he can go on again. Like, he is only 8, so yeah, a mark of 140 might still underrate him a little bit. And maybe the ultimate will be a race from Cheltenham. Yeah,
Matt, well, again, similar question. What sort of trial is this for the Brown Advisory in March?
Well, O'Fairland's Boy and Alberta's Run both did the Reynoldstown Broadway double. Quite a lot of winners have tried, and the tick at the bottom of the screen showed how they've got on. So it's been an okay trial, but as you lads have pointed out, it fell apart. Jinko Blue wasn't brilliant at the first 2 fences either, and then just made a mess of the third, and Nico went out the side door. Nicky's immediate reaction was to run him in the Pendle, because I'd had him down as a potential springer in the Broadway. Just wonder if he's a bit raw for that. Maybe he's more next season's project. But the fact that Nicky wants to run him again now, rather than just say, I'll be patient, which is how he would normally do things, maybe that's an indication of how much ability he has. So a bit of a watching brief for him for Kempton on Saturday. Absolutely echo what Donn said about the changing man. Very likeable, and so is the Tizard's attitude. They're old school, give it a go, rather than worry about the fact he was £8 wrong at the weights, looked exposed, and they got a big pot here. Love to see more trainers following that example. In the Ultima, which I agree with Donn, that looks the right level of race for him rather than the Brown Advisory. I just wonder, he is a front runner. You do get horses ridden fairly close to the pace, winning occasionally, like Canty Classico, but you wouldn't want him ridden too aggressively. They often go an overstrong gallop in that, and it's been a hard race to win with those sort of front runners. He looks uncomplicated, so maybe an amateur rider's race in the Kim Muir might suit him better, but he's very likeable.
Okay, we'll move on. We did have a race in Goran on Saturday. Donn, start with you for the Red Mills Hurdle, and also shout out to Red Mills in general. They've made a great day of this over the last few years. Goran's second biggest day of the year, but obviously with free tickets and stuff like that, they're really drumming it up as best they can.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Dan. It's great that they do that, and Goran Park, they're just very good, aren't they? They're real progressive. Like the Estes Chase there it's a must go day. And this is becoming that as well. No, it's a really good day. Kitzbühel was very good. It was only his second run for Willie Mullins, his second win. He beat Colonel Mustard and Rocky Mountain Blue and Beckett Rock at Punchestown on his first run for Willie back in December. And he did well to win here. Like he had to quicken again whenever Break My Soul came at him. And look, he's obviously really likely race. He's only 5, but I think Willie said afterwards that he might wait for entry, and the entry hurdle will be the thing for him. You can easily see him stepping out and trip this 2 miles run at a moderate enough pace. It probably didn't test the stamina to the degree to which it would have been optimal for him. But look, he's a really exciting horse. It's going to be interesting to see if he does go. Of course, the Donnellys obviously have State Man as well as Petit. Anzadam is out for the season, but Kitzbühel is another good string to their bow, and yeah, you can easily see with State Man going to Cheltenham that he'll wait for entry for Kitzbühel and the step up to 2.5 miles for an entry hurdle that could suit him. I thought Break My Soul I thought she ran really, really well. I think she was one of my eye catchers a few weeks ago. When she was with Nicky Henderson, good buy by Ian Donoghue to get her for 70 grand at the Goss UK sale there last month, and she ran a big race. She was kind of funny in the market because she was a big enough price in the morning, then she was backed in to a short enough price, and then drifted again, was sent off a 14-to-1 shot. But she did well here. She was held up. She can be keen going, as we know from her days in Britain, and it wasn't a really strong pace, probably not as strong a pace as she would have ideally liked. But she picked up well, and she did challenge Kitzbühel on the run to the final flight, and looked like she might put up a big challenge, and she did. In the end, Kitzbühel went away from her, but I still think she's a mare to keep in mind. She wears a hood. Ian Donoghue fitted a tongue tie as well on Saturday. So yeah, she's up to a mark of 136 now from a mark of 130. So just going to be interested to see where she goes. And Sir Gerhard, who was third, like he was on the form book, he was third of 3 behind Ballyadam and San Sam at Punchestown New Year's Eve, but he actually won an up the yard challenge. Amy Morrissey rode him to win an up the yard challenge. So he went into the race in kind of I know it was a charity race, but he went into the race in better form than maybe the form book suggested. And Break My Soul came well away from him when in chasing Kitzbühel home. So yeah, I think Kitzbühel is obviously exciting, but he's obvious. I think there could be more to come from Break My Soul still.
Yeah, they're saying Sir Gerhard was the biggest certainty in that charity race. I think went off 6-4. Of course, you only hear about these things afterwards. Matt, the Donnellys, as Donn touched on, have another prospect there once again.
Yeah, I think this might be stronger form than it will be given credit for. I agree with Donn. He's interesting, and Willie's talking, as Donn said, about stepping up probably to 2.5 miles in the entry hurdle. He even mentioned the 3 mile Liverpool hurdle, I think. Personally, I'd be looking at a big handicap because he jumps well. What sort of mark would he get in a Coral Cup? This was his 5th run. He's qualified now. He's won 5-3 in Ireland. Commander of Fleet, William Henry and Whisper have all won it off marks in the 150s this last few years. So I definitely hope he gets an entry and see what sort of mark he gets. But he's a good longer term prospect. And Break My Soul, as Don said, ran a blinder on her first start for Ian Donoghue. She's up to 136 now. Runners are 0 from 12 in the county. Charge and Petit Mouchoir were both placed for 155 in recent years. Nicky's view when he had her was good ground was important. So she may improve again when she gets it. If you take the bare form at face value, she's well handicapped. Time will tell whether that's the case. But she's another I'll be keeping an eye out this afternoon, see if she gets an entry for the festival.
Okay, and maybe go back to you, Donn, for the Red Mills Chase.
Yeah, just a 3-horse race. St. Sam was sent off a long odds-on shot. He won the race last year. He got beaten. He's a high-class horse. He won the Clonmel high class kind of at that level, won the Clonmel Oil as well. He has won over 2 miles 6 furlongs at Galway, but I don't know. He races so enthusiastically that maybe a drop, like all his good forms over 2.5, but maybe a drop back down to 2 miles. Like he was a 2 mile horse in his novice days. His pedigree is all flat, and 2 miles. His dam actually won over 2 miles and 2 furlongs over hurdles. But I maybe a drop down and trip, and let go and let get on with it as he wants. That could maybe suit. Classic Getaway did well to win. A good ride by Danny Mullins, stayed on well to get the better of a stable companion. He won his beginner's chase at Goran Park back in November 2022 as well, so he obviously goes well at the track. And Journey with Me was probably a bit disappointing. He does hold an entry in the Ryanair Chase, unlike his 2 rivals on the day. On his previous run, he was third to Protectorate in the Fleur de Lis over at Windsor. But I was a bit disappointed St. Sam didn't just go and win the race, but in fairness, Classic Getaway, he did stay on, and he should have got attitude to get up and win.
Yeah, Matt, I have you down as a Classic Getaway fan, but is that me just mistaking one Cheveley Park horse for maybe 5 or 6 that I just have you down as a big fan of?
No, I think you're spot on. I am a fan of his. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if he is in the Ryanair. If Grange Clare West goes for the Gold Cup, I wonder if they will consider supplementing him. I think he's clearly been difficult to train, hasn't he? And he had that first race over hurdles at Clonmel on awful ground, and he's never quite seemed to be robust after that. I remember thinking that wasn't a good place to start a horse with that sort of reputation and price tag. He just seemed to finish tired, and he's always been a bit in and out since then. But if Willie's got him back now, he's the sort of horse who could be underestimated. The Webster Cup might come a bit soon at the start of March. That Easter race that Journey With Me actually won the Grade 2 at Fairyhouse last year, Easter Day's very late this year, 20th of April. So maybe he could get in something in before that. He did run in the Topham last year, but clearly wasn't right. So maybe they'll have another crack at that. He's up £5 to 156 in Ireland. He was getting £5 to the 161 rated St. Sam, beating him 6 lengths. So that sort of form in these 3-runner races isn't easy to evaluate. But as Danny said afterwards, he's a really good jumper. The 3 fences close home in the straight did suit him. But if he can be kept in form now, he's the sort of horse who'll be underestimated this spring, I think.
Okay, and one final race. Donn, you want to talk, and I want to lead into eyecatchers then for Matt, and then back to you for yourself, Donn. So it's Sandown on Thursday.
Yeah, the Jane Seymour hurdle. Like it's a race that has been a good pointer to the Mayor's race at the Cheltenham Festival, and won this year by Hollygrove Cha-Cha. Like the 2 of the last 3 winners of this race, You Wear It Well in 2023 and Love Envoi, they both went on and won the Mayor's Novices Hurdle at the Cheltenham Festival. Hollygrove Cha-Cha has actually entered in the Mayor's Hurdle as well as the Mayor's Novices Hurdle, but I thought she did well. She clocked the fastest time of the day. And just a note on Jubilee Alpha as well, who beat Hollygrove Cha-Cha at Taunton in December. And she's gone on and won at Windsor since then and finished second. She finished second behind Diva Luna in the Mayor's Grade 2 bumper at Aintree back in April. So Hollygrove Cha-Cha in winning this race, she paid a good compliment to her, to Paul Nichols' mare. But I thought the winner did well. I thought she kept on well and won nicely.
Okay, Matt, we'll lead into your eye catchers here then off the back of that.
Yeah, the first one is, as you allude, Daniel, the second in this race, That'll Do Moss. As Donn said, the Jane Seymour's been a good race in recent years, produced 2 of the last 3 Dawn Run winners. And the consensus seemed to be that the winner was much the best on the day, just idling, and the runner-up was a bit flattered. I'm not sure. I think she was ridden to run well, That'll Do Moss, and then flew home, having had a fair bit of ground to make up. She was in front just after the line. I could see her turning the form round if they clashed again. Fergal O'Brien had Dysart Enos scratched late on when well fancied for the Dawn Run last year. Wouldn't surprise me if That'll Do Moss runs well at a big price this year, 51.0, and the typically strong pace in the Dawn Run might suit her well. She's an outsider to consider for that. Second eye catcher is Givega, who bolted up by 17 lengths in a novice hunter chase at Leicester under leading British amateur James King. He was a talented hurdler for Gary Moore, rated 132. Gary thought enough of him to pitch him into the Rising Stars at Wincanton last season on his chasing debut. He's now with Luca Morgan. Looks an exciting recruit to the hunter chase scene. He's not qualified for Cheltenham. This was over an extended 2.6. Now, they've got another month to get another run into him qualifying for the Fox Hunter at Aintree. James King's already won that twice on Dinner and Cousin Pascal. And he's a good jumper and looks to have plenty of pace. I thought that test might suit him really well, but Luca Morgan's saying plan is to go to Punchestown for the champion hunter there. He shouldn't be underestimated in that. And finally, Doddy the Great, who was second in the Haydock Patents qualifier of 126, having produced Jericho Repney to be a real eye catcher in the Patents qualifier last week at Exeter, so much so that Jericho Repney is now the anti-post favourite for the final. Nicky Henderson repeated the trick here. This was the qualifier that's produced a couple of winners, Cape Tribulation and Ballyfitz. Now, Doddy the Great had shown nothing this season, but first-time cheek pieces, stepped up to an extended 3 miles, bounced back to form, travelled with zest, no trouble going what was a decent early gallop for a 3-mile hurdle. Brian Hughes looking around on a number of occasions to see where the opposition was, qualified with a minimum of fuss. He's been put up £5 to 131. Last year there was a cut, 129. The other year of the 4 qualifier rule, 24 were declared for 24 places, the bottom weight 121. So looks to have a good chance of getting in. And he went off just 10.0 for the Coral Cup off 132 last year when Nicky's horses were under the weather. I suspect he's been a handicap project for a while. If the headgear works again, he's a contender for the final. 26.0 looks a big price.
Okay, and Don will hit with your 3 eye catchers here.
Yeah, one of them is the first is from the same race actually as Matt's race there. I studied the Great, the Pertemps qualifier. I thought Chasing Out the Blues did really well to finish third. He was back in the field off a moderate enough pace, and he kind of got out pace whenever they quickened at the top of the home straight, and it looked like he was going to just drop away. And he was pretty badly hampered as well when Manila Sixo fell in front of him at the third last flight. He did well to recover his equilibrium, but he definitely lost ground and momentum at that point, and he actually did well to stay on then and got the better of Jipko for third place. He was rated 118 going into the race. He's only up a pound now, I think, to 119, and that may not be enough to get him into a Pertemps final. But it may be that the Premier Handicap, the one that Quinny Mayboy actually won last year that we mentioned earlier on, might be the race for him anyway. He obviously goes well at Haydock. He's gone well at Weatherby and Ayr as well. And so that type of flat left-handed, well, Ayr is flattish left-handed track seems to suit him well. And yeah, that just might be a race for him. He's only run 6 times over hurdles, so he's got plenty of scope to improve again as a staying hurdler, and it may be that staying chasing is his game. He's out of a half sister to the Storyteller and to Stellar Story, so he's got plenty of stamina in his pedigree. And yeah, I think wherever he goes next, he'd be worth keeping an eye on. The second one is Teresita, who stayed on to take third place behind Victorino in that the 3 mile handicap chase at Ascot. She's got form over 3 miles over hurdles, and in fact she won over nearly 3 miles over hurdles at Fakenham back on New Year's Day a couple of years ago. But she's unexposed at staying trips for me over fences. She's been in really good form this season. She was held up early on by Tom Cannon and then stayed on then the near side. In fact, going to the final fence, it looked like she might trouble Victorino in 300 through 5. She didn't get there, but she's only beaten 3 parts of a length. Those two were both handy from early, and I just think there could be more to come from her over kind of staying trips over fences. And the third one then is Sláinte of Galair, who finished 4th in the Albert Bartlett Triple Crown Series at Gorham Park. I thought again he did well to win. They didn't go a great pace again. He was back in mid-division. He got outpaced around the home turn, and then he stayed on to take 4th place just behind Camino Rock. There was a 3-way go for third. He just missed out on 3rd place, but he won over 2 miles and 7 at Punchestown on soft ground in January last year. So this 2.5 miles with off a moderate enough pace, that probably wasn't a strong enough stamina test for him. I'm not sure if he's what the plan is from now. I think he's qualified for the Pertemps all right, so I'll be interested to see if he goes there. And Gordon Elliott, his trainer, he's won 3 of the last 7 renewals of the Pertemps, albeit 2 of them with the same horse. He has been ridden by a conditional rider in each of his last 3 runs. Finn Brickley rode him here, so maybe the Martin Pipe Hurdle is on the agenda. He's actually a half brother to No Ordinary Joe, who finished 2nd in the Martin Pipe Hurdle 2 years ago. So he's had 10 runs over hurdles, but I still think he's unexposed, especially when he gets a greater stamina test.
Okay, there are the eye catchers there from Matt and Don, and we're going to cover a couple of Cheltenham races today, and we're going to start with the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Matt, I suppose hit us with your trend and maybe just a brief overview of the race without maybe going through to selections, and we'll get Don to kick off.
So the Gold Cup trend is horses stepping up from 3 miles or 3 miles half a furlong for the first time in a chase under rules. 10 from 39 this century, 31.79% profit. 20 of the 24 Gold Cup winners this century came from the first 3 in the SP market. So if you narrow it down to runners going off a single figure price, the record improves to 9 from 19, 198% profit. And the theory here is that stamina concerns tend to be overplayed in the market. And in practice, the horses who'd improved for stepping up to 3 miles have a great record.
I mean, it's screaming Banbridge, albeit he's done 3 miles and the King George, Dan, but to go those extra couple of furlongs in the Gold Cup for you?
Yeah, you just don't know, Dan. I'm a Banbridge fan. So look,
yeah.
Calvin Champ is phenomenal horse, going for history, going for 3 Gold Cups in a row to join Arkle and Best Mate and Cottage Rake. They're the only 3 since Golden Miller. So look, it'd be brilliant if he went and did it. He's an odds-on shot to do it. He deserves to be an odds-on shot to do it. It's hard to pick holes in him, and it seems like this season he's been at least as good as last season, maybe even a wee bit better, for all that he didn't win the Irish Gold Cup or the Savills Chase by 23 lengths. He still won them really impressively and very cleverly by Paul Townend off a moderate pace that he himself set, and therefore he didn't have as hard a race as he might have had if it had turned into a grueler. So Galopin Des Champs, and he's on track. So look, he's obviously the one they have to beat. But Banbridge, yeah, like I think he's often an underrated horse. He's the King George winner now. He won the Martin Pipe Hurdle. That's often the springboard for top class staying chasers in the future. And as we've discussed before, Dan, when he won the King George, he was fastest of all through the last 4 furlongs, and second fastest was Ile Francais. So it wasn't like Ile Francais fell in a hole. It was like he had to go and pick him up, and he was fastest by far. So he's got Cheltenham form, Cheltenham Festival form as well. So I think he's a real contender and a real competitor for Galopin Des Champs. Ground is key. He disappointed in the Ryanair Chase on soft ground. So on soft ground he might not even run. But on kind of goodish ground, and as the week goes on, the ground tends to be better on the Friday than it is on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. So I think the Gold Cup is on the right day for Banbridge. It gives him a better chance of getting his ground on the last day. So yeah, like I think he's a big player. Look, Monty Starr, I think he'll improve on his Irish Gold Cup run. He's only had 2 runs this season. He's still unexposed, and a greater test of stamina will suit him well. I'm not sure, the race could cut up. The fact of go to the Ryanair Chase, Grey Downing, L'Homme don't think they're going to run. So it could cut up quite a bit. Look, it's go and see Galopin Des Champs and appreciate him, but don't rule out Banbridge, I think, as a real life competitor.
And before I bring Matt in, so in and around 8.0-ish is the price available at Matchbook at the moment. Don, I mean, if he gets there, all good health, and the race cuts up the way we think it will, he's going to be half that price, isn't he, on the day?
Yeah, you would think that you are betting on the ground there a little bit as well, Dan. Like that's
of course.
The double that it's going to be good to soft, no worse, and that Banbridge goes and wins. But yeah, if he's there and it is good to soft, no worse. Yeah, I think he's a player, all right.
Yeah, I guess, Matt, it's almost trying to price up yourself just based on previous Cheltenham and maybe looking at the weather a week or 2 out, which most people will be doing, and too many people are doing for those angles to last long in anti-post betting. But yeah, Banbridge 8.0, maybe to kick off your thoughts on the race with that price at the time of recording. Is it worth taking?
I'd be holding fire for exactly what you've just said, Daniel, and try and get the sweet spot in the run up to the meeting. 3 weeks out is too early to be trying to predict the ground, because he is so ground dependent. But I want Galopin Des Champs to win. But 1.65, he's a fantastic horse, but I think he's even better at Leopardstown. He's won 5 steadily run open grade 1s there, and I think that sort of test suits him ideally, especially now he can be ridden prominently, settles well, jumping's getting better and better, and he just uses his class to sprint away from his rivals. But he was all out to beat Jerry Colombe 3.5 lengths in the Gold Cup last year. If you look at Jerry Colombe's form in open grade 1s, I wouldn't say that says that he should be as short as 1.65. So I am interested in trying to find a horse against him. And actually, it's the same 2 that Donn likes. Banbridge, as Don's explained, he stayed on really strongly to run down the LA Francais, who wasn't stopping. Yet if you'd never seen him before, you'd say he was a stayer at 3 miles, might improve for the Gold Cup trip. But because people have seen Banbridge before, he's been putting up high-class performances in grade 1s and 2s at 2 and 2.5. There's more doubt about his stamina. But he was a Martin Pipe winner 3 years ago. They tend to become thorough stayers. I think he might well improve for the Gold Cup trip. So very much weather watch. And I'm hoping to be able to back him maybe in a week, 2 weeks' time. We'll see. The other one, Monty Starr's also watching brief, not had a clear run with him this season. He's been crying out for a well-run 3 mile, 2.5 furlongs at the Gold Cup will probably provide. Good jumper. And whilst off 159, he looks to have a lot to find. I can see it happening. He was given a blow the cobwebs away ride on his belated seasonal reappearance on New Year's Day at Tremor. Ran a solid race to be beaten just under 8 lengths in 5th in the Irish Gold Cup. steady gallop wouldn't have suited. That was a time when Henry's horses were out of form. The other de Bromhead runners at DRF were all out of the washing. So the vibes would be important with him. Henry's a master at peaking horses for Cheltenham. They often get back during festival week. Minella Indo was back from 21.0 to 10.0 when he won. So he hasn't had a clear run with Monty Star, but if he's flourishing at home, he could be one for momentum punters. I'd be prepared to take less than the current around 17.0 if the vibes were good. So my suggestion is keep an eye on both and be ready to pull the trigger if circumstances dictate in the run up to the festival.
Okay, good bit of group thinking here on the Matchbook Cheltenham Trail. That never tends to end too well. But Matt and Donn both siding essentially Monty Star and Banbridge at the time of recording, but not pulling the trigger at the time of recording, if you get me, trying to find that sweet spot, maybe 2 weeks out, a week out for Banbridge, and maybe even less so if the vibes are good for Monty Star. Let's move on to the second race. We're going to cover the Champion Hurdle, a much more competitive heat. And how often has that been the case in recent years versus the Gold Cup? Constitution Hill 184, and then we've got 3 in the slipstream base. We've got brighter days ahead. 6.0 time recording. That exchange price is obviously fluctuating on a daily basis and will continue to do so as the preview circuit kicks off next week properly. Last team out 6.4 and Stateman 10.0. Matt, I'll let you kick off here. It's obviously bigger prices the rest, and Golden Ace we touched on is around a 46.0.
As you said, Daniel, this could be an absolutely belting Champion Hurdle. I think punters and pundits on the preview circuit are going to be split into 2 broad camps about Constitution Hill. Given that he's one of the best, maybe the best hurdler that any of us have ever seen, the race does revolve around him. So one faction could argue bare form of his 2 runs this season and the one last season, miles below his peak. Racing Post rating's got 177 for winning the Champion Hurdle. Those 3 wins, 158, 162, 150. I suspect some in that camp will be suffering from confirmation bias, having been eager to oppose him all season. The other faction are going to say, Nicky Henderson, the way he does things, he won't have been fit for either of those starts this season. He's a deep girth gelding. Even so, the paddock judge has been saying he's been carrying lots of condition. And despite that, he easily beat a race-fit Lossiemouth. So the theory is he'll improve enormously at the festival, wins bar an accident. And I suspect some in that camp will be believing it because they want to. There's been nothing seriously wrong with Constitution Hill, but he's had lots of niggly problems. So it's all evidence he's not been easy to train. About 1.84, that's much shorter at about 1.57 non-runner, no bet. So there's a fair bit of juice in that if you think he's going to get there. But you have got the unknowns of how the final stages of his prep go. Nicky's going to need to put the gun to his head now. Will the mares take him on? I think there's an argument for waiting and getting a bit more information. Of the opposition, Stateman may have had a hard race at Leopardstown because they went so hard the first mile. Lossiemouth need to improve a lot on a Christmas hurdle run. But both are still interesting because if Stateman's actually in the same form as last year and you put a line through Christmas, some of Willie's were under the weather, you don't draw any conclusions from the Irish Champion Hurdle. You could argue he's cracking each way value. Lossiemouth, if you argue something was wrong with her at Kempton, she didn't look happy. Ears back, going past the stand the first time. Having shown she can go a strong gallop early on the Irish Champion, she's still a big player, providing she's over the fall. So normally I'd be saying that each way value is one of the Mullins pair because Brighter Days Ahead shorter on the basis of one performance that's open to different interpretations because we've much less of an idea where her ceiling is. What makes this different is that if Constitution Hill turns up anything like his old form, then the sort of level Stateman and Lossiemouth are run to isn't going to cut it. They'd have to improve a lot to even trouble him. But if Brighter Days Ahead does run, she could be anything. My hunch, it's only a hunch, is that only fitness got her back past Stateman in the Morgiana, and that might be more of a guide to how good she is than that Christmas solo. So fantastic though this Champion Hurdle could be, it doesn't alter the fact that we can back up one of the greatest hurdlers ever at only a shade of odds on. So I wouldn't put anyone off doing that now. I'll be listening to the vibes. Again, there's a bit of a sweet spot for backing Constitution Hill, maybe a week, 10 days before the meeting, get his last bits of work out the way and check that all is good from 7 Barrows. But this is an absolute all-time great. And on that context, it might look a huge price.
Yeah, it is. It maybe the whole race probably does revolve around Constitution Hill. Donn, as much as us in Ireland, we're so impressed with Brighter Days Ahead and that gallop, but if she can replicate that on a Cheltenham form, and she's obviously been put away and freshened up for that, then that it could still be good enough to be, a 90% of Constitution Hill's best, perhaps.
Yeah, look, it's fascinating, Dan. The whole Champion Hurdle picture. There are so many unknowns. is Constitution Hill going to be as good as he was, as his best? Probably not. How close to it is he going to be? And that to me is key. And Matt's outlined all of that there, and it's fascinating, you know, that we saw with CU then going back in the 80s, what Nicky Henderson was able to do with a lightly raced horse, won 3 champion hurdles with him. On Constitution Hill, it may be that he's going to peak on the day. It may be that when you start tightening the screws, then maybe the frailties are going to emerge. So we just don't know. And then Lossiemouth, she's top class. Her run in the Hatton's Grace Hurdle was, I thought, really, really good, where she beat a top-class horse in Teapu, who is only having the same program this year. Hatton's Grace Hurdle, Stayers Hurdle, and then on to Punchestown. I was disappointed with Lossiemouth at Kempton. She just didn't travel, and maybe it was that she just, all of a sudden, from going around at a slightly slower pace, it was a culture shock for her. But up until she departed at Leopardstown, that to me was put to rights, because she was able to travel up with a fast pace up in front of State Man. Her jumping was very good. She was slick and clear over her hurdles. And then, you know, whatever happened, she lost concentration, or it wasn't like her. She'd never fallen before. But obviously that's a negative, going to Cheltenham on the back of a fall. It's not ideal that your last run before Cheltenham was a fall. That said, she is trained by Willie Mullins, so there's every chance that she'll be back as good and revved up and slick and sharp again. And, you know, it would be surprising if she wasn't for a champion hurdle. So she's a massive player, but like, brighter days ahead. She's just, as Matt said, we just don't know how good she could be. And Gordon Elliott, he kind of was always slow, or always kind of reluctant to say how good he thought she was, because he thinks and has thought for a long time that she's very, very good, and she is. And she beat Stateman in Oregon Hurdle, as Matt said. She did have race fitness on her side, but then that performance at Leopardstown over Christmas, big performance. She had King of Kingsfield in the race to set a pace. She was able to track him. That could have all ended in calamity down the back straight, but it didn't. And he stayed on his feet. She took it up, and then she kept on going. She didn't relent when she got past him. She kept going. And look, that wasn't Stateman's day. It wasn't his running. He lost second place to Winter Fog. We know that. But she was just so impressive in doing that. You know, she's only been beaten once in her life. That was in the Mayor's Novices Hurdle last year. It was at Cheltenham, which that's a little bit of a concern. But the pace just wasn't anything like the pace that she needs, and the pace that she's going to get, all being well, in a champion hurdle if she goes there with King of Kingsfield in the race, especially. But we don't know that she's going to run in the champion hurdle. That's not confirmed or decided. And in as much as you have to get the double up with Banbridge with the ground, you have to get the double up with brighter days ahead, that she runs in the race, and then that she goes and wins the race. But like Matt said, I think this mare could be anything. She gets a good pace to run at, then yeah, I think she's a massive player in the champion hurdle picture if she goes there.
Yeah, for what it's worth, just that hype going into the Mayor's Novice Hurdle, and obviously it was, given how the race was run, not the fast pace didn't suit her, but yeah, I just think she's very special. I think she could be a player even beating Constitution Hill if he's close to his best. But my thanks to Matt and Don. We'll be back same time next week to preview. We've got Cheltenham preview nights coming up. Keep an eye on our social over the next couple of days as we finalise details of that. It's only 3 weeks to go to Cheltenham Fest, so we're very much looking forward to here on Matchbook. And do as ever, check out the Matchbook Betting Exchange. We a lot of our Cheltenham markets are getting filled up for the anti-post, but obviously those 48-hour decks and onwards, we will be best price on the odds checker grid on the majority of horses. But we'll chat to you this time next week. All going well. Bye bye.